We're back today with two repeat guests, Tyler Scriver and Neal Gibbons, talking about the immense amount of suffering they have liked to cause the department. We're going to be talking about ice baths today and some of the benefits, both physical fitness wise and also mental wellness wise. So let's just jump right in. See what I did there? Jump right in. Okay.
Oh, it's cold.
We'll cut that part out. Neal, why don't you kick us off? Because I think you have been researching and doing this the longest with the Wim Hof method stuff and cold showers. And so tell us a little bit about your journey with cold immersion and how you got into it and then what's kept you going with it.
Yeah, and I can't really take credit for getting started in it by myself. I worked a lot with Ken Straw, Corey Bingham, that kind of introduced me to the Wim Hof method. And the more I started finding out about Wim Hof, his life story was just extraordinary, and just the things he was able to do physically, it is incredible. And I started looking into that, and reading his book is pretty interesting. It's called the Wim Hof Method, but it's a good read. If you're interested in this, that's where I started. And getting into that, he talks about a little bit of his life story, and then he just talks about how he found out, or how he noticed that there was benefits from getting into cold water or cold water immersion therapy. And so I remember talking about it with Bingo one day, and we were sitting around, and I was like, this seems pretty hokey, Bingo. And he's, you got to try it. And he eventually talked me into it, and it was just turning the shower all the way cold at the end of the shower. And you talk to people and say, I've been taking cold showers, and they're like, you take a cold shower? And yeah, when I was on my mission in Haiti, we didn't have heated water, and so every shower was a cold shower, and you get used to it. But I mean, the first couple of drops of the little 8-ounce cup, scooping it out of my 5-gallon shower bucket, I'd dump that on your head, and every time it was just a good cold shock. And that was probably the first time that I noticed the shock and how strange that was. And looking back and thinking about that, I've had the discussion with a couple of people, but my ability to thermoregulate in Haiti, I didn't feel like I was always boiling hot, but I knew it was super hot outside. It was super dry. And I carried a handkerchief in my pocket all the time, and that was just to wipe my face. And some poor white guy in the middle of Haiti, where I didn't see another white person for a month at some points. But
and just to clarify for our audience, this is a Christian mission, not prison.
Yeah, it was not
so,
prison.
Cups, 5-gallon buckets, hot as hell. But
yeah,
okay,
hot as Haiti.
Hot as hell. Yeah.
But anyway, it was by choice to go there. But yeah, it getting there and doing that. Anyway, that's where I started doing it. And then like doing tree work and being outside all day long, I would come in and just be overheated or felt like I was super warm, and I'd take a cold shower in summers. And then as a firefighter, as I started talking to Corey about that and starting to make the connection between some of those things that from my past and what he was talking about, I was like, there is some real science there. And I started doing 2 or 3 minutes at the end of my showers. I would just turn it all the way cold, or as cold as I could stand it. And Wim Hof, he talks about, it's not about going from 0 to 60. You start out with 15 seconds in the cold as you can stand it, to where it's still uncomfortable, to where you still get that cold shock, and working your way up to 30 seconds, and then pretty soon you're doing a minute, and pretty soon it doesn't bother you anymore. And it still to this day, like when I get in, if I start with a warm shower and once I turn it cold, I still get that initial shock. Ooh, you get that kind of takes your breath away, which that's the point. But doing that, there's a ton of benefits, which I'm sure we'll have time to touch on that later. But that's where I started. And I've been doing cold showers pretty much. I don't think I've missed a shower where I haven't turned it cold in the last around 3 years, just over 3 years. And I've seen a ton of huge benefits from that now that I understand a lot of the science behind it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. It goes along with that, everybody's familiar with building atomic habits. Even if it's, like you said, just for 15 seconds at the end of the shower or whatever, but just by doing it every time, you're starting to build that habit, and then it becomes that much easier every time if you make the habit of at least turning it cold every single time. Have you noticed a difference since the more recent ice baths over cold showers, or is it a pretty similar experience?
There is a difference, because the ice bath is definitely more uncomfortable than the cold showers. And I remember with the cold showers, there's a day when Corey had been taking cold showers for a long time as well, but we both had been on that cold shower kick. We were on a traffic accident down in front of Macy's, and I remember one of the UHP guys was talking to us, and we had our bunker pants on, but he comes over and he's like, "What are you guys doing? It's starting to rain out here, and you guys are in t-shirts." And me and Corey looked at each other and was like, "Are you cold? No. Are you cold? No." And he had his big heavy winter coat on, and he was just like, "You guys are insane. It's freezing out here." And I thought, it's really pleasant, and the rain was a little bit chilly, but I felt fine. And that now that reading some of that new, or getting into some of the new data that I've recently discovered thanks to Tyler, it makes a lot of sense. And seeing my body's ability to thermoregulate back then versus now, the ice baths, it's I don't know, the ice baths are different because it makes you so uncomfortable. Some joints hurt, or some parts of your body hurt when you're in there, but then getting out, you feel just that huge dopamine rush, and you feel so good for so long afterwards. I don't feel like I get super hot or super cold anymore when I go outside in whatever temperatures it is. And I still do a fair amount of work just out in the yard. Last year going on wildland, there's all kinds of times doing tree work outside. It's super hot, but I feel like I'm really getting overheated ever. And same with the cold. I don't ever feel like I'm getting too cold. My hands might get super cold if I don't have a decent set of gloves on or something, but like I don't ever feel like I'm really cold or really hot anymore.
Yeah, I think that's great. I wish my story for getting into it was cooler, but it's nothing short of peer pressure from you two. So
Right.
just so you guys would still be my friend. But Tyler, tell us a little bit how you got into it and what you've learned as you've gone along.
Yeah. For a while, it was just kind of like something that was mentioned. Oh yeah, cold baths. Joe Rogan getting a cold bath. And I didn't really have any desire to do it because I hate being cold. I absolutely loathe it. I tell my kids I would rather burn alive than be cold for a second. But as a crew, we started watching this documentary. I think it was called Limitless with Chris Hemsworth. And part of that, he swims in the Alaskan Sea or something crazy like that. The start of the episode, they're sitting on some port in Alaska, like Anchorage or something like that. And his coach is like, "All right, let's get in the water." And he jumps in and he's, "Oh my gosh, it's cold." And seeing how much he struggled with it, us as a crew, we're like, okay, that's crazy. We're not going to do that. But by the end of the episode, we're like, we're doing it. And the next morning, the plan is to clear out a recycling bin, fill it full of snow and water, and then jump in there. So we were ready to roll. And as luck would have it, I ended up going on a transfer to Primary Children's Shock, and I can't remember who else was there, but yeah. So we were there, we're getting ready to do it, and then got to go on a transfer. So we go on our transfer, and I'm driving, and I'm listening to stuff, but the whole time I'm thinking about, I really do not want to do this anymore. Like, this is the worst idea ever. So we drop off our patient and we're driving back, and I just finally told myself, like, you're going to do it. You're going to get in there, and regardless of what happens, you're going to at least try something new, do something difficult, do something challenging. We pull in, and Captain Shock, he has the recycling bin just chucked full of snow and ice. I think the first couple times we did this, I can't remember, it was January, February, or something crazy like that. And my partner, he's okay, like, when are we going to do this? When it's going to happen? I was like, I'm doing it right now. And I just walked over, I took my clothes off. I had to climb up a ladder to get into the ice bath, and then I went in there, and it was awesome. In the moment, it was like at first, I was almost like a cat trying to stay out of the bathtub. I got my arms on the side of this recycling bin, and I'm trying to keep every inch of my body out of it. And I was like, no, I told myself I was going to do this. And then I dunked, and Captain Shock was there, and I remember going in, and I'm thinking, I got to get out of here, and I got to do it fast. And he just, as silly as it sounds, he just looked at me and said, "Hey, Scriver, you're safe, buddy. Like, you're okay." And then this switch just flicked in my brain, and I was like, I am safe. This is uncomfortable. My fingers, my toes, they hurt, but I'm safe, and I can do this. Took a couple deep breaths. I can't remember how long I was in there the first time, and I thought, man, my whole body's in here, and I'm doing this. Then I look back at like the picture of my first ice bath, and it was like barely up to my shoulders. I was like, crap, that sucks. Next time, I'm going all the way in. Well, after my first one, then I really started to absorb some information about it, really tried to seek it out. I listened to a few podcasts, and in these podcasts, you learn about all of this cool stuff that your body does when you submerge it into freezing cold water. And I needed to get more of it. It was weird because there was a mental part where I was like, I did something hard and I want to do that again, but this time I want to go for longer. I don't know if it could get any colder because of that recycling bin was chucked full of snow. But then my body was like, I like that. I know I usually have issues, IT band issues in my knee. And I got out and you're cold and whatnot, but throughout the day I noticed, man, that sucker's gone. Like, I haven't felt that all day. We went and we did the stairs and I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it for a couple weeks. And I came back and I was like, I guess it's time for another ice bath. Then I was hooked. And we went from a recycling bin to now we have like a tote. And I've been in the Neal Special, which is like the creme de la creme of ice baths. That thing is awesome. But yeah, now I can't go without it. It was like last week I was in a bad mood. I had my kids and I was trying to be a good dad. We went to the swimming pool. I was tired from being on shift. I wanted to work out, but I was super sore, and I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to get a good workout. And I was like, I wonder what the 120 boys are doing right now. It's like, I should text them. I should go get in an ice bath. And then not even 20 minutes later, I get a picture of Brent, his first ice bath, in there. And I was like, I got to make this happen. I was gonna say that was my last one, but we did another one on shift, and I can't get enough of it.
It's crazy because I feel like, initially it was 100% peer pressure for me, but then as I did it just a few more times since, like the first time I did it when I was super sore after a leg day, and just that type of sore where if you sit down for more than 3 minutes, then to stand up is like excruciating. But man, after doing the ice bath, out being that sore, and then just having that relief for a few hours after that ice bath, it felt so good. That kind of got me more hooked beyond my initial reasons to get in. But it's funny that the same reasons that kept me out were similar to yours, in that all my PTSD from being freezing cold on scout camps. I was like, no, I am not getting in that bath. I hated those camps. It was so cold. But let's talk about a few more benefits that you guys have seen, both physically and mentally, and then we'll get into maybe some do's and don'ts after that. But you've been doing it for a long time. What are some of the benefits you've noticed in your life, both physically and mentally?
Yeah. Kind of going back to just what you guys have both already said, the aspect of not being sore, taking away a lot of that inflammation, especially anytime you're doing an extensive workout or doing something where you're just completely gassed. Afterwards, you want to just have a way to get feeling better, or try to prevent some of that soreness of the next day. I've done that quite a few times, and when we go do stairs, we put our 35-pound air packs on and run around the football stadium or the basketball spectrum, and it's a lot of stairs. And a lot of times, like, mentally, I'm conflicted. I don't want to go, but I want to go because I want that feeling of afterwards, or feeling that I get after the workout, that feeling of accomplishment, that dopamine release, and then knowing that you did something super hard and how many benefits you're going to be gaining from that workout. Going back to that, the benefits from that, it doesn't seem like there's nearly as much inflammation for an extended period of time. And recently, last Saturday, I went and did the Spartan Beast at Snow Basin, which was brutal, and it took me 6 hours 9 minutes. I did it last year. It's a 21K. It ended up being 15.39 miles this year, and I was feeling pretty good about it. Went home, got some ice, threw it in the ice bath, and I sat in there, and I just felt awesome. I knew I was going to be super sore, and getting out of the car just from driving home from Ogden Canyon, it hurt to stand up. So I drove to my brother-in-law's in Smithfield with my truck, which is a manual. So I get in my truck to drive home, and I'm like struggling to push the clutch in, and I get it in gear, and then I just dry shifted the whole way home because I couldn't push the clutch in again. But getting home, I got in the ice bath afterwards, I was like, I feel great. And I remember exactly how I felt last year after it, and it was like an extended 2 or 3 days that I felt terrible. Just my legs and everything was just shot. This year I had a little bit of soreness after the fact, but I did the ice bath pretty much consecutively every day since last Saturday, and yesterday was really the first day I hadn't done it, but I feel awesome. No inflammation, no super soreness.
Tyler, tell us a little bit more. I know you've gone pretty deep into the science of some of the physiological benefits. And so tell us a little bit about what's going on with your body when you do the cold immersion and why it's helpful for your body to go through that process.
Yeah. So initially, we could get crazy deep in this to the point where humans are some of the only creatures out there, and whales are the other ones, but we have a special section in our brain that allows us to do something that hurts, right? I'm gonna jump in this ice, I know it's gonna hurt, but I'm gonna get some benefits out there. Most animals, most things out there, they can't do that. And the volume of cells that we have in our brain, even compared to a whale, is just crazy different. So you get in there and you feel that shock, right? Your body's going to go into survival mode, which sounds like a horrible thing, but that's what our bodies are supposed to be doing. Our bodies are supposed to be protecting us, and we're supposed to have all this different kind of stimulus, mental and physical and all that stuff. So initially you're going to get a bunch of epinephrine, you're going to get a bunch of norepinephrine, and you're going to have like your peripheral arteries and capillaries and stuff like that. Those are all going to constrict. But this cool thing that happens is as you sit in there, your body actually makes this thermal layer around your body where it's not that it's going to feel warm, but it doesn't necessarily get any colder, which is a good survival technique. We're going to talk about getting rid of that when you're in an ice bath to really just get the most out of the experience. So agitating the water, moving around, getting more of that cold. But yeah, doing the chicken wing. Yeah. So as you do that, there's all sorts of crazy stuff. Cold shock proteins that your body doesn't release, it doesn't use until you are in a quote-unquote life or death situation to help your body survive. So those are going to be released. And then a lot of people are unfamiliar, but you have fat that's around like your collarbones, and it's a specialized fat. You have brown fat and you have white fat. White fat would be the general adipose tissue, your body fat, love handles, that kind of stuff. The fat that people hate, that really is just energy storage. Brown fat is actually almost like an organ, and it helps with metabolism. So when your body gets in that cold water, it's going to boost your metabolism. Most of the calories you burn throughout the day are just to maintain your body temperature. So when you drop that body temperature, you're going to have to start burning more calories in order to keep that up. When you get out of the ice bath, you start to shiver. Your body then starts to dilate all those blood vessels. It starts to warm up. It actually, the normal rhythm throughout the day is you start cold from when you were sleeping, you warm up a couple degrees as you're awake, and then as you fall asleep, your body starts to cool down again. What the ice bath does is it cools your body super fast, but when you get out, your body then has to warm up, so it'll help with the whole waking process. One of the don'ts is don't do it right before bed. It's like caffeine. Some people can do it, some people shouldn't do it, but it warms up your body, which wakes you up. And then we could.
So that's one of the biggest mental benefits I've seen.
Totally.
And like just this last shift, like sometimes, especially if it's a little slower or whatever, and even if you're trying to stay busy, it just seems like there's an afternoon like lull where it's super hard to stay motivated to keep training or to keep studying or to keep working on whatever you're doing. But man, every time I've gotten to that point, then I just tell myself, okay, I'm going to do an ice bath. And then it's like starting fresh in the morning, ready to go. Like I just got out of bed, and you just feel a renewed sense of, I don't know, motivation and energy to like, and I feel, and I've seen it even on the off days, like it's been, because I feel like I try to stay pretty busy on my 4 off, but if I'm starting to feel that way during the day too, I'll text the guys at 120, hey, do you mind if I come up and take an ice bath real quick? Because man, when I do it and then I come back to the office or whatever, I am so much more productive because my body's just more, I don't know, I guess waking up and ready to go.
Yeah. You think we consume caffeine to block the tired hormone, which is no, that's one of them, and then it starts with an A. Adenosine, thank you.
I'm not a medic, by the way. I'm just an
so caffeine blocks the adenosine receptors in your body, and that's all it does. That's why you have that crash. You drink caffeine, it blocks it like Narcan, right? It makes it so adenosine can't go into those receptors. When caffeine's gone, you have more adenosine in there, and so you feel more tired so you're going to drink more caffeine, right? An ice bath is your physiological drinking caffeine without the caffeine, and your body's going to do a 10 times better job than any kind of chemical that you can put into it. So yeah, you get that awakeness, that wakefulness, and then Neal was talking about that. So you did something hard, and as a reward, you're going to feel good because you get this other neurotransmitter. You get dopamine that's released into your body, and you feel accomplished and you feel motivated. And then we mentioned it for a second, but for chronic pain, actually Jason Ward, he came up and he worked a shift at 71 with us, and he did not want to get in there, and he was complaining about having some sciatic pain. And the way that I peer pressured him into it was like, dude, you get in that ice bath, you're not going to feel your sciatic. Like it's gonna take your breath away, but I guarantee after that, you're not gonna even notice it's there. Jumps in the ice bath, he stays in there for 5-6 minutes like a champ. He gets out, he warms up, and he's going throughout the day. And the next morning, I haven't felt my sciatic pain since we got in there, and we got him hooked. And then the next thing I know, he's at 72, and they've got an ice bath going down there. And everybody's jumping in the ice bath at 72. The reason why is because Jason, he was hurting. He's like my IT band. It hurts. It sucks. But you jump in there, that pain goes away, and man, it feels so good to be pain-free.
Yeah. There's a couple other benefits too that I've heard about, but I don't know any of the science behind them. Is like immune system boost. It help better sleep at night if you don't do it right before you go to bed. But either of you familiar with any of the why it's helpful in those areas?
Yeah, and actually Tyler, he introduced me to, there's a lady, Dr. Susanna Soberg from Denmark. She did a podcast with the Huberman Lab guy, and she was talking about immunity boosting. And she, in the Scandinavian countries, they'll take their babies and put them in their strollers, or she calls them prams, but they put them outside to take a nap, and they have that cold exposure in the wintertime on their face, and a lot of our receptors are in our face. And that's partially why, like when we talk about doing a vagal response or trying to help somebody in SVT, one of the options is to put ice on their face or put their face in a bowl of ice water, which doesn't seem like it's a great idea. We're going to drown this person in ice water to help slow their heart down. But the science behind that is that's going to initiate that initial shock, activate that catecholamine response with like what Tyler talked about, the norepinephrine, epinephrine, the dopamine. But that helps to shock the body. And the more shocks that you get with that lady she talks about, that's going to be what helps build the immunity of people when they do with their babies. And that helps them build a better immunity that sustains throughout their life. And I think partially it's just because it's colder there in Scandinavia. They're able to do that, and they continue to do that where they grew up being exposed to that extreme cold. And that's when, like she talks about, she does like they have a whole bunch of people out in the bay that just go hop in the bay in the wintertime and go for a swim. They do it every day. And doing that type of a thing, just being able to shock your body, it builds up that immunity level, and it's just our natural body's response. And I don't fully understand the science behind it, but it works. And being a paramedic, I should know that type of thing, but I really don't.
One other one that I failed to mention was there recently has been a study on doing a cold bath before you do resistance training. And we'll talk about cold baths and resistance training when we come to the do's and don'ts. But this group of, I want to say they were Australians, two groups, one that was just doing resistance training, one that would do a cold bath or cold exposure and then do resistance training. The cold bath and the resistance training had a crazy significant increase in testosterone. And men, we need high testosterone levels. Crazy thing. Women, they also need testosterone. Doing that cold exposure, doing that resistance training it helped maximize that group of individuals' testosterone levels. So sleep, testosterone, pain control. It's pretty awesome what you can do with a little bit of cold water.
Yeah. And I think circling back to the Wim Hof method, right? It's almost like the more that practice you get at this and putting your body into that survival mode, because during survival mode, you're at your peak performance for everything, right? Like your body's doing everything to help you survive, and getting to the point where you can control that a little bit more. It's not circumstantial to where you have to wait to be in a circumstance for your body to go into that mode, but to be in practice to where you're in control of when you put yourself into that mode. And it seems like that's where Wim Hof is, right? Like he can control his core body temperature whenever he wants, and that's pretty crazy. So yeah, just the benefits so far outweigh the discomfort that you just have to start believing it. And for my experience, it sounds like Ward's experience and some of your guys' experience, you just have to experience the benefit one time, and then that pain-free, that rejuvenation, and then you're hooked. And I think for anybody out there that's been skeptical, man, just giving it one try, which really you can get a lot of benefit out of just for the one time, but you'll be hooked. So let's start into some of the do's and don'ts, because there definitely is a wrong way to do it that can not be helpful and be harmful to your workout routine and other things. And then also some good things to consider when starting. And I think we can work from like a basic level to an advanced level, because I think you sent me that Huberman thing the other day that said 5 minutes at 68 degrees is still helpful. So you don't have to go to 32.6 for 15 minutes to like right out of the gate. There is a way you can work into maybe more colder, more time or whatever, but you can get immediate benefits from what he called an annoyingly cold exposure.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. General rule of thumb is so the colder, the less time that you have to spend in there. If you're, and the hard part with this is a lot of people, they want to know hard and fast what the temperature is, how long do I need to stay in there, and it's even for the mental benefits. It all depends on how acclimated you are to the cold. So if Neal were to get in there for a 60-degree temperature, he'd probably feel like he's in a hot tub.
We didn't all spend time in a Haitian prison.
Yeah, but there are other people out there that 60 degrees is cold. And if they get in there 5-6 minutes, they're going to get even just one exposure a week, they're going to get a mood boost from that dopamine. So the colder, the less time that you need to spend in there. But again, it just goes off of that. General rule of thumb, you want to try to have at least 11 minutes total exposure throughout the week, not in one single sitting. The first time the dang Shock family came up and did it, at this point we've been doing it for a couple weeks, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to look like rock stars. I get in there, I'm in there for 7 minutes. I'm like, so cool. And Shock, JC Shock, Jesse Shock, they jump in there, and they're in there for 15 minutes, and we're like, throw some snow in there, make it uncomfortable for them. They still just rock, just in there, dunking their heads. You guys suck. That would be a good example of maybe you spend a little bit more time. You definitely need to be safe. Cold baths, awesome. Cold, controlling the environment and controlling the situations around it, right? You're in a tub versus a lake or a river. You go out into a really cold river and you're out there for too long, you could drown. Be careful with that. Jumping in a tub, just remember Andy telling you that you're safe. 6 minutes is about the most benefit that you're going to get for as far as your body goes, but the mental benefit of being in there for a little bit longer, up to 15 minutes, somewhere around there, those are some good places to start. So if it were me and I were to do it all over again, I would skip the recycling bin because that was gross. I would get set up like you guys have at 120, throw some ice and some water, and I would practice just going in, staying in there for a couple minutes, then coming out, and then trying to get that 11 minutes throughout the week. As far as exercise and training and things like that, you got to decide, what are you training for? If you're training for hypertrophy or strength, so if you're trying to build muscle or build strength, you shouldn't do a cold bath after you work out. The longer you wait between when you work out to when you have that cold exposure, the better. So it's a minimum of 4 hours, preferably 6 to 8 hours. My perfect day: wake up, get in a cold bath, go to the gym, do a good warm-up, spend 15 minutes getting all the blood back into my fingers and my toes, doing a lift, and then being done. And then probably, if I was feeling really crazy, probably around 6 o'clock at night, and jumping in for another short exposure. If you are training for a Spartan, if you are training for a half marathon, if you're doing endurance type training, you can do a cold bath right after, right? If you're training for a marathon and you have a week where you have tons and tons of miles that week, jump into a cold bath right after you're done training. Part of that with the endurance is recovering quickly. That cold bath, that cold exposure is gonna help you do that process. You can wear gloves, you can wear booties. Some people, they don't like the way it makes their hands feel. Keep your hands out of the water. Put gloves on. If you have neuropathy in your fingers and your toes, it can be very painful. So either keep them out of the water or get these little booties, put those on there, and then jump in.
Is it important to go up to your shoulders?
Up to your neck is preferred. Yep. Up to your neck is preferred. The other thing that you can do is if you get a headache when you jump in there because you're up to your neck, you can put a cap on, put a stocking cap on, and that's supposed to help prevent those headaches from happening.
So Neil made me dunk my head this last time.
Good.
He threatened to do. I
Probably
don't know if
harm.
this is like peer pressure or hazing. I haven't found that line yet. But is that a do or a don't? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I know what Neil's gonna say.
I say do it at least a couple times. You can have that experience. Dunking your head is going to speed up how much heat you lose. Your body temperature might drop a little bit faster. You might not be able to stay in there safely if you dunk your head. I tell you what, there are times that I crave to have my face in cold water now. And when I jump in that ice bath, and at the moment, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to put my head underwater. But when I do put my head underwater, hold my breath for a little bit, come back up, it's like a second shock to the body. It's like a whole nother cold exposure as far as those mental benefits go. But if you're starting out and you don't want to do that, don't do it. Leave your head above water, get some experience underneath your belt, and then at least try it a couple times.
Especially if your captain tells you to.
Yeah, no, especially if he does.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot to it, just with the extra thermal receptors that you have in your head, your hands and your feet. I would always suggest getting full body immersion, and like you said, getting booties or gloves, or even keeping your hands above the water. As long as you get in and get that initial response, there is nothing wrong with getting your fingers, putting them up on the sides, or getting them out of that water. Because we've talked to a lot of people that have done it, they have just like deep bone pain, that neuropathy, and that kind of steers a lot of people away from wanting to do it again. And you don't have to get them in there and keep them in there. It's just like the face. I like to do the same thing, get that secondary shock, and I've tried to see how long I can hold my breath under the water, and you come back up, and usually when I pop back up, I want to get out now. And so it's been another difficult thing for me to tell myself, no, let's stay in for another minute. And then at the end of that minute, I'm going to dunk my head again. That was awesome, because by that time, with your head being the only thing above water, it's warming back up pretty quick. But that's something that I'd always suggest, is getting that head immersion, because just the added benefits from that secondary shock like you talked about, Tyler, and then those extra thermal receptors, being able to do that. And even if you're doing cold showers, starting out with cold shower, get it uncomfortably cold to where you can stand it. And I usually do 15 seconds on my chest, 15 seconds on my arm, 15 seconds on my back, and then my other arm. And then I slowly put my head under. And to this day, I still get that initial shock, just taking your breath away. But then seeing how long I can keep my face in that cold water it almost becomes like a challenge, or it becomes like another hurdle to get past, and another mental hurdle. But there's huge benefits from that. So a lot of people out there that don't want to get into the cold bath, just start out with the shower. Just try turning it as cold as you can get it, as cold as you can stand it, and understand like your body is going to temperature regulate itself, and then get to where you're able to stand that, and it doesn't feel as cold after that 15-30 seconds. And especially once you start like on your chest, if you do the full twirl, once you come back to your chest, that water does not feel that cold anymore. And it's just like that experiment back in the day when you hold a cup of ice water and a cup of hot water in one each hand, and then you hold the same cup of the same temperature in the middle, and they both feel different. Both hands feel different. Your body will acclimate to whatever temperature you've got it on. But being able to do that and start out just with the shower and work up to the cold plunge it's huge benefits.
Does that come back to the time and the temperature, to where it should never feel super comfortable, right? And if it does, that's probably a sign you should be doing it colder or longer or anything like that?
Yeah, and it's that initial shock that you're looking for. If you're getting to the point where you don't get that shock, you should be looking for getting that, just pushing it a little bit further. Because even like as used to it as I am, like when I get in the cold bath, the ice bath, it is cold and I get that shock. And I still do get that shock from when I jump or when I get in the shower and turn it cold. And for me, it hasn't ever gone away. And I've been doing it for quite a while. Not nearly as long as Wim Hof, but I'd be curious to have a conversation with him and say, how much of a shock is it still for you? Which, knowing the science and understanding that now, that initial shock on your skin, that is what gives you that thermoregulation response.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cold shock, man. I brought my kids up to 120 to do a cold bath. My two girls, and they were dead set. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get in there. And they had done one previously at 71. So I get up there and I'm throwing ice into the trough, and it's 40 degrees, and they're like, oh man, that's cold. And I'm trying to act all cool. Yeah, it's fine. It's nothing. Keep throwing some ice in there. My oldest, she decides, okay, now I'm getting in. This is when I get in. So she gets in there and she jumps in and she stops about the water levels about chest high, and she's, man, nope. She's making silly excuses like, I don't want to get water on my shoulders and stuff like that. And I'm just being super encouraging. Parley, you can do this. Just go all the way and up to your neck. Just make it happen a little bit. She goes in there, she gets up to her neck, she instantly comes back up, but then I watch, and she slowly sinks back in there. And where she was like, I don't want to get my shoulders in the water, she's almost up to her neck, and she was there for about 3 minutes. Then my middle child, her best was to get in there. She went 100%, all but drowned herself in the thing, and she stood back up and she got out. And then it was my turn, and I'm like, I got this. And I stood there for half a second. I don't want to do this, but I knew in my executive brain, I'm in control. I'm the boss. This little primitive brain inside my head that's, no, you can't do this. Why would you? You're going to die. Nope. Sorry, buddy. I'm going to think my way through this. And I jumped in, and I was able to keep the respect of my children as a man and a father, because I didn't wimp out. But it's always there. That shock, that once I get up to that lip, whether it be the plunge tub, whether it be the recycling bin, like, I don't want to do it. But I can tell myself that I'm in control, that this survival brain, sure, it's important, but I can override it with just clear, direct thought, controlling my breathing, get into that water and reap those benefits, and still have that, oh my gosh, this is so cold, what am I doing? And tell myself I'm safe, take a couple breaths. Yeah, it's usually about the 5 or 6 minute mark. I start shaking uncontrollably, and then my wife makes fun of me, but like, I'm just agitating the water. I don't have to do the chicken wing thing. It's there every time.
So tell us a little bit about that with okay, so 3 questions. One, I want to talk about agitating the water, why that's helpful. And is there a temperature that's too cold? We got ours down to 32.6, and I started thinking there's probably a line where we're about to cross it, where we shouldn't get in. It's detrimental. Is there a temperature that's too cold that you definitely should not do? And then back to the time limit. Is there a minimum? I think I've heard 3 minutes before is like a minimum amount of time you should spend in there to just start getting benefits. So if you do it less than that, you're really not accomplishing or hitting that threshold of, I don't know, does that make any sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The time threshold, that, and I would advise anybody that wants to know the science behind it and understand that better, way better than either one of us could explain it. That Huberman Labs podcast with Dr. Soberg, it's super great, super explains everything really well. Doing that, the 3 to 5 minute is that mark where you're going to be getting the maximum benefits. But in her book, she talks, the winter swimming, Dr. Sober talks about just that initial shock is what is the most important part of it. And getting that initial shock, even if you just get in and hop right back out, like your middle child going pedal to the metal, jump in and jump right back out, she's still going to be getting a lot of benefits from that. But to maximize the benefits, that 3 to 5 minute window is really where you want to be time-wise. But that's, you've seen guys that hop in after, I believe your first time you hopped in, you're in there for 50 seconds.
I was hoping that wouldn't be brought up, but it's fine. It's fine. I can take it.
And that initial 50 seconds, you and to your credit, Brent, you're like, that is bull crap. I am not going to accept that. You jump back in, and then you're like, nope. Then that third time, you're like, I am going to 3 minutes. Once you get in, it's amazing. You watch anybody their first time, that first minute and a half or 2 minutes, they are still in that sympathetic nervous system response, fight or flight. You can see it in their eyes. You see it in their face. They're just like, I have got to get out of here now. Once you hit that, for me, it's about a minute and a half. After that minute and a half, for me, it's just, this is pleasant, pretty comfortable in here. Start doing the chicken wing or start shivering and start moving that water around to keep that cold water on you, keep that shock happening. That's super important. You look at the collegiate athletes, and they've been doing this way before any of us ever thought that we had discovered this new fancy thing.
My dang wife.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about her.
But when they after a game or sometimes in the half times, they will jump into that ice bath, and that is huge for their recovery. But a lot of those have a swirl, or they have a whirlpool agitator that keeps that water moving so that it doesn't sit and you don't build that warm water barrier around your body. But keeping that agitation, keeping that water moving is super important.
Yeah, we had a guy that he made the comment, man, this has got to be so much worse for you because you shave your body. And I was like, I don't know, I've always just done it. So he decided he was going to shave his body, and he jumped in and he said it was the worst thing ever because that thermal barrier that your body creates, right? Your hair stand up on hair. Yeah. Get rid of it. Try it out. That your hair stands up and it creates that thermal layer. And he said it was night and day difference. Time, yeah. So I mean, if you want most of the benefits, 3 minutes, right? If you want to try and get the most physiologically out of that, awesome. But I equate it to, it's just like working out. If you get on a treadmill and the most you can do is 15 minutes, that's 15 minutes more than that you did versus sitting on the couch. If you get in there and you dunk your whole body in and you get out, you never would have done that, right? You at least were in there for 5-10 seconds longer than if you would have just talked yourself out of it. Can it be too cold? Yeah, so the things you start to worry about at like those freezing temperatures, and for the most part the exposure is it's a controlled, relatively safe environment. But if you're going longer periods of times, look out for hypothermia. I don't know if somebody could get frostbite from it, but before we retired the recycling bin, we decided how cold can we get this thing? And there was probably 1.5 feet of snow and ice on the top layer of this thing. So I jumped in there, and I'd done it a couple times. I'm straight up to my neck, and I can feel it on my back. And not so much the cold water, but I could feel, it's just like when it snows outside and it's been out there for a while, you try to run through it and it's crusty and it can scrape your foot up and stuff like that. I can feel that on my back a little bit. So as we're going, I'm trying to agitate, I'm trying to move. I get out, and it looked like I had scratches all over my back. It was superficial, nothing too crazy, nothing too horrible right there, but something to think about. You have ice sitting directly on your skin. Your chances for getting frostbite at that point is probably a little bit more, right? If you're going to go in there for 15 minutes, maybe you might have some stuff, you might have some issues with that right there. But
is there any issues with 15 minutes, 35 degrees?
Yep, there is.
Yep, but yeah, those would be things that kids can do ice baths, but they lose body heat faster. They don't need to be in as long. Look for signs for hypothermia, that kind of stuff. And again, it usually takes a bit. There's actually, I was trying to find a chart that says, this is how long you should be in an ice bath if it's this temperature. There weren't very many of those charts. But I'll tell you what, there were a lot of charts of. This is the temperature. This is when you're going to start losing dexterity. This is when you die. And so if you're worried, you can just Google search ice bath graphs, and there's tons. Like military has researched this for diving and all sorts of stuff. There is too much. But if you're doing that 11 minutes a week, maybe even more, right? But you're keeping those exposures to like 3 to 5 minutes, I think you're fairly safe.
Keep the ego out of it, right? I think if you're going like these crazy temperatures, crazy lengths, it has less to do with trying to get benefit. It's more about proving something or whatever, right?
Yeah.
What about breathing during the whole thing? Because Wim Hof, like, you can hyperventilate before you get in, then breathing during. Like, how does that, is there any do's or don'ts with breathing that you guys have found helpful?
Yeah, and for one of the biggest benefits, the Wim Hof breathing is just controlling your breathing. He talks about taking those deep breaths in, filling up all your alveoli, getting the maximum expansion, and just doing a couple super deep breaths. You can feel, like for me, I can feel all that oxygen, all that blood flowing out throughout my whole body. And most people, you don't look for that feeling, but if you do take a couple of super deep breaths, you can feel it. You've got that rush of all that blood flow. And so getting in there's a couple things with that blood flow, or with that Wim Hof breathing. You get in this super deep breath through your nose, and then a long extended breath out through your mouth. That is where, like, it's doing a couple things. You're helping out your executive versus primitive brain because you're thinking about controlling your breathing, which we all know the box breathing is a super good way to get out of that primitive brain. And for a quick explanation, box breathing is you just 4 seconds inhale, 4-second pause, 4-second out, exhale, 4-second pause, and that it creates a box with your breathing. But doing that a couple of times helps you get out of that primitive brain. And for being in the bath, like especially with my kids, all 3 of my kids have been in the ice bath, and every time I try to coach them and say, hey, you need a big deep breath in through your nose and then slowly exhale through your mouth. And for them, once they can start thinking about that and engaging that executive brain, you can see the response on their faces, and they're physiologically, like, they start to calm down, they start to control their breathing, they start to gain control of their body and be able to say, yes, I can do this. This is a hard thing, but I am safe. I am capable of doing this. So controlling that breathing, I think, is super important. And there's the other end of the spectrum, like, you can hyperventilate in there. And there's been times, like, when we got it down to 32.4 degree or whatever it was the other day, like, I got in there and there was probably 8 inches of ice on the top layer of there. And when I got in there, I started breathing. I thought I was controlling my breathing, but pretty soon my earlobes and, like, the back of my face was starting to feel numb. And then pretty soon I'm doing the with my lips, doing, like, closing them off. I'm like, hey, I'm breathing a little too fast, trying to control my breathing. And so being able to notice those things is super important, to say, I have to slow it down or get control of my breathing. But I do think that the pre-oxygenation or the deep breathing beforehand, I think any good deep breathing is always beneficial. And Wim Hof's always going to suggest controlling that breathing. A forceful push out or forceful exhale after a good deep inhale is always a good idea. But that's, from what I've seen, it really does help. It's a good way to get control of yourself and keep that control.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Definitely don't hyperventilate if you're doing open water, right? So if I hyperventilate and then I go in that cold water, you could pass out, you could drown, things like that. Practice messing with your breathing. Brent, you asked me the other day, hey, do you hyperventilate before you go in there? And I just get in there. And then when the first couple minutes, the first thing I try to do is think, okay, focus my breathing, figure that out. I watched the Wim Hof documentary, and that's the breathing that I try to do. A good forceful, fill my whole lung, both my lungs, with oxygen, and then breathe out. And I've noticed that if I focus my breathing, I start shivering way later than if we're talking and I'm distracted, then I'll start shivering right off the bat. If I breathe, I focus on that, I can go longer without shivering. The first time my oldest got in the ice bath, I got a video of her, and again, my stupid wife, she's got to be a hero and everything. She's done ice bath for years, being a collegiate athlete, but my oldest, she gets in the water, and you can see the panic in her eyes, and she looks at me, and I can read her brain, and she said, nope, you're not any help. And then she looks over and she looks at Aaron, and they make eye contact, and Aaron's, take a deep breath, Par. Breathe. And you see her, and she takes a deep breath in through her nose, and she breathes out. And then all of a sudden, that executive brain takes over, and you can see it, just a switch, just through focusing on your breathing. And that's again exactly how she was coaching her. Long deep breath, inhale, and let it out. And that's now how I try to do it, because of Wim Hof, not because of my wife.
And I think for me, that's the hardest part to get control of, because I tell myself I'm going to do it, but it seems like that first minute and a half, like, I'm trying to control it, but it's more just like a panicked. But I think that's a good, like, for me, that's a new way to look at it, and a new goal is my first objective when I get in this water is to take control back of my breathing, because my body's going to have its response, and the faster I can, and that's just something to practice. So that, yeah, if I can do that, and instead of it taking a minute and a half for me to gain that control back, I can get it to the point where I can do it faster and faster, then I think that's a helpful physiological thing to get control of. Just as we wrap up here, I want to end on, and this whole thing could be a whole nother podcast in itself, and maybe it will be, but I just want to talk for a minute, and if everybody maybe shares one or two insights on this part of just why it's important to do things you don't want to do, and why is that helpful for resiliency, for just overall kind of building character and just being a good person and ultimately being a good firefighter. Why is that an important mental aspect to practice and to kind of master? And then we'll wrap up and go from there. Like I said, I know that could be a whole podcast in of itself, but for me, with the first experience of doing it, that's what bothered me the most, is 45 seconds, and I didn't want to do that, and I gave in. I got out, and that bugged me, and to the point where I just didn't want to let that be how that experience ended. But I think there's something to being able to just tell yourself, I definitely don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, because it has to be done. And certainly in firefighting, there's the dramatic moments of fire and rescue, and where no one wants to go in this claustrophobic, smoky, hot space, right? But it's a job that has to be done. There's also those moments at 3 a.m. when the frequent flyer falls out of bed, and we also don't want to do that, but it needs to be done, right? And how has that impacted you through ice baths and building that, doing what you don't want to do, mental toughness, and how has it benefited you from your life? I know Neal grew up on a farm, and just with building that initial right out of the gate as a kid, how has that kind of impacted your life and made you who you are today?
Yeah, I think that being able to do hard things is something. You mentioned the farm. 2 a.m, the cows are out. We got to get up and go get them back in, get them rounded up and get them back in their pen. Getting up at 3:30 in the morning and going out to milk cows or feed cows in the middle of the winter. I remember in high school it was like negative 38, 39 one morning, and that was miserable, but the cows never took a holiday. Same thing in emergency response. 911 doesn't ever take a holiday. We're there 24 hours a day, getting up and saying, yeah, the public has an expectation for us to perform. And it doesn't matter if we're doing a lift assist, helping grandma get back into bed, or if we're doing a surgical cricothyrotomy. We have an expectation to perform, and whether we're ready or not, the public needs us. And I think for me, being able to get past that mental block of, yes, I can do something hard as an adult. One of the hardest things for me at times, like I come home from work or I get home from doing a long day of tree work, I'm dead tired, and my second boy, John, he's, Dad, let's go play king goalie out on the front lawn. I am so tired. That is the last thing that I want to do, but I am not going to miss out on a chance to go out and kick the ball around and potentially get hit in the bad spot, as he likes to say it, and do that, which that's another story. But anyway, being able to go out and do those things. And my brother Jason, he said it the other day, he's like, being the yes man for your kids. Like they ask you to do something, every time it should be a yes. Every time they ask you to or go play Barbies with Maggie or go whatever it is, every answer for those kids should be yes, absolutely, let's go do it. No matter how tired, no matter how bad you don't want to do it, being there for your kids is huge. And so I think that aspect of doing something hard has really helped me to have that realization that it doesn't matter how hard something's going to be, whether it's a Spartan race or whether I'm combing out a tangle in Barbie's hair. Like those things they're going to happen, or whether they'll happen or they won't. The fact is, I want to choose to be there for those opportunities. I want those opportunities to continue to come. I don't want my kids to say, Dad's not going to do this because he's tired. He's not going to want to do this because he's tired, or whatever else. And then the same goes for being there with the crew. Ryan is always, hey, let's go do the stairs. What time you guys want to go? And I'm usually dragging my feet, and usually the rest of the crew is pretty on top. We're like, yeah, let's go. But every time like he says that, I do not want to be the guy that says, I'm too tired, I don't want to go do it. I'm too sore, I don't want to go do it. But being there for your crew, being a part of them, and then just being able to be the yes man for all those little things. Little things count for your kids, for your crew, for all of it. And even going that extra mile. Brunacini talks about, it's all about Mrs. Smith, checking to make sure that the dog wasn't let out, or checking to make sure that the door is locked behind so-and-so at the nursing home, to make sure none of their stuff is taken or going away, and make sure they have their phone. Those little things that we don't necessarily have to do them, but going that extra mile and doing them is going to change us into being that super dad, into being that super firefighter, to being that super example to all those people around us, to just be there and be that guy that people say, I need something done. I need somebody to come dig up my front yard. I'm going to do it because he's
easily taken advantage of it.
No, because he's going to do it. He's the man.
Yeah, from firsthand experience, I know Cole is the man. He will come dig up your front yard. Yeah, that's awesome. I knew I should have went first, because no matter what I say after this is going to seem dumb compared to yours.
Whatever.
A couple things for me is, one, I've always hated hearing like, oh, well, when you're after 30, you're going to start to lose 1% of this in your muscle mass. And I saw a thing the other day, speaking of Luke, he reminded me that I should probably review the facts on it. There's this thing that's like, most people after 30, they're not going to sprint. They're not going to purposely expose themselves to cold water. They're not going to do hard things. And I'm like, 30? I'm 35. That's dumb. I want to be able to do that stuff way later in life. I always told myself I want to be that strong grandpa. I want my grandchildren to be like, Oh, Grandpa Scriver, he's got it. He'll come take care of this. I don't want to be some feeble, sits on a couch kind of a thing. I've tested my body. This is just another way to test my body. This is just another way to improve that mental fortitude. Coming back from that transfer at Primary Children's, I don't want to do this. It's going to be cold. You hate being cold. Yeah, I hate being cold because it's miserable and it's the worst. Shut up. You're going to get in there. You're going to back into the bay. You're going to take your clothes off. You're going to jump in that dang thing and you're going to stay in there and you're going to do it. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Executive Brain Sir. I'm going to do that. I think that is really important to developing our brains and to keeping our brain alive. We have this habit as human beings to find comfort. And once we get to that point where we're comfortable in our lives, then when things get really uncomfortable, they're really uncomfortable. And I don't want that to be the case. I always want to be in a growth situation, whether it be going to bomb school and right after paramedic school or right after critical care school or whatever. Like I want to prove to myself that I can do these things. And it starts with getting in cold water. If I can tell myself, look, you're smart enough to pass this anatomy physiology quiz, awesome. The worst thing I'll probably do today is get into a cold bath. Oh, but I love that now. It hurts and it sucks and I initially don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. And then I feel like that transfers over into what Neal was saying. It might be 1 o'clock at night and the tones go off and you're ready to save someone's life or to do something cool. You're just taking somebody back to a nursing home. That person who I'm the patient person, they don't care what I signed up for. They don't care if I haven't been on a structure fire. What they need from me is they need me to be a human and to get them back to where they feel comfortable and where they need to be safe, and they need to do those things. And if I can tell myself, get in some cold water, it's going to be painful, then I can tell myself I can be a human to this person regardless of the situation. If it's grandma, she fell down, we got to pick her up. If whatever the situation is, that positive mindset of I can do this, I'm safe, I'm strong, like more than just physically strong, I'm mentally strong. I'm going to test myself every single time. Every single day I'm going to do something hard, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pass that test. And if I don't pass it the first day, or if I don't pass it the first time, I only spend 45 seconds in that water, I'm going to beat myself up until I get in there for that 2-3 minutes and I pass that test. And the crazy thing about cold waters, I don't think it gets any easier. I mean, it gets, I definitely start to notice things like you're talking about taking a deep breath and feeling your blood go throughout your fingers and your toes. I know that sensation. I didn't know what it was, but as you explain it, man, I'm excited to get in there again and to really focus on that. Catch my breath, tell my breath I'm the boss and I'm going to do this, and then notice those little tiny small things. And I know that mental fortitude will transfer over to doing things that I didn't sign up to do. But that person who needs my help, they don't care. They don't care what I signed up for. But I'm there to do it. I'm there. I'm going to be pleasant, and I'm going to give them the best care that I possibly can.
Yeah. And I think you both hit on this really well, but you're essentially building up these bank of experiences that you can draw on. So when that crappy moment comes up later, you can say, well, at least it's not a 32-degree ice bath. Yeah, I've done that, been there, done that, and so this isn't that bad. Or this isn't picking up rocks in the field. Like, this work really isn't that hard because you have this bank of experiences that were harder, that you lived and you survived through. And I think for me and the ice bath, the first time after hitting that kind of 2-minute mark and I knew you hit that zone, then after that the next one wasn't nearly as hard because my body and my mind knew that was coming. But that very first time you don't know, and you just feel like that's never going to come. But I feel like as a firefighter, we're always trying to bring control to chaos, right? Like that's the job description. And being able to do that within ourselves, just like you guys said, the chaos of home life, and being able to let some of these things translate over into doing hard things. But I think building up that resiliency and telling yourself, and if I just feel like if we can look at some of those aspects with relationships the same way we approach an ice bath, wouldn't it be great if, and speaking hopefully to my future self, wouldn't it be great if 45 seconds after I told my kid, no, I'm too tired to go do that with you, I changed my mind and went back out, hey, you know what, that was dumb, I do want to be out here and I want to do this with you, rather than let that decision. But for now, that only applies to ice baths for me. But that's something, one of those things I want to work on and get better at, is is that even if initially maybe you're not living life the way you want or whatever, and it only takes that one decision to turn that around and try again.
Yes, ma'am.
Progress, not perfection.
There we go. I know that there's an effort to try to get ice baths in every station. Hopefully that's going to happen soon, but certainly come up to 120. We're going to keep on keeping on, making that better and better. If anybody needs that, please reach out. Of course, these are the experts here, so they're happy to help peer pressuring you into doing it. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.